Hi, good morning. Oh, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Oh, hold on, let me just figure out this technical. Parker, can you hear me still?
Yes, I sure can.
Okay, it doesn't look like anybody else can hear me. So perhaps you can let me see here. Okay, give me one brief moment here, everyone, if you can hear me. Hi, good morning, everybody. Sorry, I was working out a few technical details here, but we're going to get into it. My name's Tom Holmes with Tangent. We're going to present you some tips and tricks for Power BI this morning. And for that, I'm going to introduce our Power BI MVP and expert, Parker Stevens. Parker, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hey, Tom.
Terrific. So I'll hand it over to you, Parker.
Wonderful. Welcome, everybody. Thank you, Tom. Again, my name is Parker Stevens. I am a Microsoft Data Platform MVP and certified Power BI professional. So today we are going to walk through 7 tricks in Power BI, or 7 functionalities in Power BI that really you should add to your existing Power BI reports in order to make them as effective and functional as possible. So these seven tricks that you should have seen on the invite are bookmarks, drill through, hierarchies, dynamic metrics, forecasting, row level security, and finally subscription. So we're going to walk through each one of these. This will be a pretty technical walkthrough. We will build each individual solution. So what you're looking at right now is the completed Power BI file. You can see we have multiple tabs here along the bottom. So each one of these tabs is going to represent one of those tricks. So we're going to start with just the basic view of this report. This is a 1-tab basic view of a financial insights dashboard. That's pretty nice functionality. In case you were with us for our last webinar, this is the one that we had used. So we have a couple of slicers here on the top, so you can adjust the date range, you can adjust the product type. Everything you click on the screen will affect other visuals. So that's what Power BI is good for. It allows you to filter through different facets of your data in order to see your data in a view that you may not be able to see with Excel or your current reporting capabilities. So we also have a slicer here on the top that allows us to select a measure. So in case we want to view revenue instead of our quantity, we can view our revenue. So really dynamic. I'm going to show you how to set up a lot of this functionality with these 7 tricks. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into the first one, which is bookmarks. So on this view right now, there actually aren't any bookmarks set up. Bookmarks allow us basically 2 functionalities that aren't really available out of the box. They allow us to hide and show visuals dynamically. So in case you wanted to maybe hide these 3 visuals under certain circumstances to save some space, or they also allow you to set up personalized views of data in case, for example, let's say you are an analyst who only ever looks at, I'll go ahead and extend this date range, who only ever looks at, sorry, I have some existing filters here, who only ever looks at certain product types. So I'm kind of giving away the idea here. But if you only look at certain product types, let's say you are the lanterns expert, and you only want to see that kind of subset of data in the Power BI report, we can set up a bookmark so that you will only ever see that data. Kind of save you some time instead of having to filter down to the product types you want to see or the data you want to see. We can set up a personalized view for you. So the other method being, or the other reason you would use bookmarks is for you to hide and show visuals. So that's actually what we're going to show in this first trick. So since it's already built out, the functionality is going to show like this. We're going to click on a button. It's going to pop out a separate filter pane. This is a nice piece of development here because it allows you to really save some space in case you want to throw all your filters on this kind of collapsible and expandable little card here. So we can click that arrow and hide it and pop it back out. Select maybe we only want to see Europe and North America, and then we can just hide that again. And so it saves a lot of space. So we're going to walk through that bookmark functionality first. So I'm going to hop on over to this other file I have. Basically looks the same, but it doesn't have any of the functionality already built out. So we're going to go ahead and do that together. So there are quite a few steps for this first example. So we are going to start by adding a button, or actually we're going to add a shape, just an arrow. We're going to throw this over here on the left so that we can start that pop out functionality. We're going to rotate it 90 degrees so it's facing that way. We're also going to add a couple other shapes. Let's go ahead and add a rectangle. This rectangle is just going to be placed on top. We'll drag it down a little bit. That's the best we can do right there. We are also going to open up the selection pane. So the selection pane allows you to click on these visuals much easier than by just clicking on the canvas. So if we click on the shape we just put down, let's try to find it. Yep, there it is. We can move this up so that it sits on the top of the other visuals. So doing so, it's now on the top of our stack. We're going to let's add another couple slicers. In our example, we had a slicer for continent. We're going to throw in the continent from the sales table. And then also we'll add that other slicer. We'll just copy and paste. Oh, I don't think I copied properly. There we go. Throw this one down here, move this one back up. And this slicer on the bottom will be our product. So now we have two extra slicers. We can see they're both sitting on the top here. I'm going to move this one up. So they're both sitting on the top of the stack. We'll add one more shape for that left arrow to close or to collapse that filter pane. And we'll put this in the top left and rotate it 270 degrees and move that shape to the top. So we have our little arrow up here. So that's pretty much all we need to do for the visual aspect of it. This is where you actually go about setting up your bookmarks. And to do so, also in the View tab, there's something called a Bookmarks pane. If we open that up, it adds another pane right here, which allows us to create new bookmarks. I'm going to hide some of these panes to get a bigger view. So from here, all we have to do is click Add, and that creates a bookmark for us. So we want to rename that bookmark. We're going to call this, let's say, Filter Pane, because this is our view when we have the filter pane open. And then we want to go ahead and hide these visuals. So if we hide them, hide the slicer, hide the shape, hide the other slicer and the arrow. Oh, I did have an extra slicer there. This is our view when we don't have the filter pane open. So this is going to be a bookmark of its own. So I'm going to call this basic view. So now we have two views. If we click on filter pane, we see that's when the filter pane is out. We click on basic view and it's not shown. We want to make two more changes. If you click on the ellipses, we need to uncheck this data option. What that does is basically if you make selections on this filter, it won't actually carry through when you click on the other bookmark. So if we uncheck data, it's going to allow us to keep those filters when we're switching between bookmarks. It's very important. We're going to do that to both bookmarks. So now we have our two views, filter pane and basic view. We can now attach the action of opening that bookmark to these shapes. So if we click on the shape, and I'm going to open up our little other pane here, we can switch on action and change the type to bookmark. And then our bookmark that we want to navigate to while we're on this basic view is the filter pane. And then if we hold Control and click, it will open up that, it'll open up the filter pane bookmark view. And then we want to click on our arrow and add an action to this one to take us back to the basic view. So we'll click bookmark and basic view. So now we can click between both of them and it works very nicely. So if we were to open up the filter pane and select Australia and Europe, then we can close out that filter pane and we still have those selections. So now we're saving a lot of space here. You can do this by hiding and showing visuals themselves. So in case you had a view with maybe 2 bar graphs and a line chart, but then you had a bookmark that takes you to maybe some cards showing high level metrics, you could do that as well. So you're basically condensing 2 tabs down into one, gives you a little bit of flexibility there. So that's kind of the methodology for how you would create a filter pane. The other way in which you would use bookmarks is with those personalized views, and we'll do that in the Power BI service. So just as a little primer, this is Power BI Desktop, which is where you build the Power BI reports yourself. Once you're done building the report, you publish it up to what's called Power BI Service. This is where you would share with your organization. So let's go ahead and go there. I've already published this report. We're looking at the same one here. So if we were to go to the Bookmarks tab here, this has the same functionality that I just showed you. But we can set up a personalized bookmark. So let's say we wanted to look at, let me get rid of those filters again. Let's say we wanted to look at, let's say 2017 data. So 1/1/2017 through 12/31/2017, specifically for, say, tints. And we were looking at the quantity. Let's say this is a view that you go to every day and you know you're going to want to go to this data maybe every day. We can go on the bookmarks up here on the tab and click add a personal bookmark. We can name it. So this is my 2017 tints quantity. Click save. Then we have our personalized bookmark. So when you reopen this report, it's going to be reset to default here. So you're going to be looking at it like this. But then you can quickly access your bookmarks to take you back to the view that you're going to be viewing very often. So bookmarks allow you a lot of functionality and really add to the default functionality of Power BI. So let's go back to our development file. So that's bookmarks. We can go into our second step, which is drill through. Just want to make sure I'm on the right file here. Yep. So drill through allows us to take a selection from one page and drill into another page into more detail. So I will show this demo right here. We see that we have a bar chart showing the retailer country on the left. We have a drill through tab that shows these orders on the order line or on the order ID level. So each line here is an order ID. It's showing some specific metrics like date, order method, product type, pretty much everything you would need to know about that order from this data. So we can see that when we drill through from one country, let's say France, we can right click drill through into the 2B drill through tab. And we see that all of our records are now showing only records that came from France. And we can even see that it comes with a little back button by default up here that we can control click and take us back to our original view. So this is very easy to set up, but it adds a lot of depth to your reports. So we'll do that in our demo file. Going to close out a couple of these tabs. So on our drill through tab, I don't have anything set up here. This is just the basic view. All the work really happens on that drill through page. So I don't have anything here. Let's add a quick table by clicking on the table visual. I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger. Let's add our fields. So we had order ID, we had our date fields. We don't need too many. Retailer country, maybe product type, and cost, revenue. I think that'll do it. And then order ID, we want to not summarize. So we have all of our order IDs here on the left. We will sort them correctly. Okay, United States of America. We're looking at a subset of data as well, so I'll extend that out. So now we're looking at all of our data here. So the only thing you need to do to set up drill through is actually just on this right side in this drill through section here. You're able to add as many fields as you want in order to drill through from one page to another. So in our example, we had used the retailer country. So if we take retailer country and put it in the drill through fields, we can see that is now available to us. So now when we go to 2A, we can just click on a single field, right click, and drill through to 2B drill through. There are a couple of options that you need to note when doing this. We can see that Italy is the only country showing as of right now. But the options we need to keep in mind are these, the keep all filters option. You can see that it's on. And because we drilled through, it's taking the selections from the previous page. So we see is on or after Monday, September 3rd, 2018, which is because on our 2A page, that's what the date range was set to. We also have another couple, like measure is total profit. That's what was selected in the other page, or product type equals lanterns. Yeah, since product type is selected, or lanterns is selected in the product type on the 2A page. So you do need to keep those in mind. We can also just exit out of those and add another field to the drill through well in case we wanted to. In case we wanted to add maybe product type, we can add as many as we want, drill through from one page and land on the second page with that detail. So in order to do so, we would need a field on the 2A page that would allow us to drill through. So for example, we only have retailer country on the y-axis here. So that's why we were able to drill through to 2B drill through. If this were also product type, since we threw that into the 2B page, we would be able to drill through on product type as well. So pretty good functionality. Also, recently Power BI has allowed you to drill through from one report to another. So instead of just going across tabs, you're able to drill through across reports in your organization. So pretty cool there. A lot of flexibility offered by that functionality. With that, we'll jump into hierarchies. Hierarchies are good. They also are basically out of the box for date metrics. Your dates will come with a hierarchy in the year, quarter, month, day breakdown. So we'll walk through basically the built-in date hierarchies, as well as the a couple other ways that you can create your own custom hierarchies. So we have similar visuals on the page here, but if we draw our attention to this line chart on the right side, it's separated by date. We have our selected metric across the y-axis. So if we were to get rid of date and throw date back into the visual, we see that it has a date hierarchy by default. And you can see this because it has a little date symbol on the right side. That means Power BI has automatically created a date hierarchy for you. And in our axis well, we can see that date is divided by year, quarter, month, and day. So this allows us to drill down onto this visual. And there are a couple ways that you can drill down, and it's kind of confusing because they give you so many options for drilling down. The easiest to understand, in my opinion, is by clicking on this down arrow that enables drill down. So when you click on one of these categories here, so 2016, 2017, or 2018, let's say 2017 for these purposes, we can drill down into 2017 and go to that next layer. And in this case, the next layer is quarter. So we have quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4. If we were to drill into quarter 3, we're now on the month level. But keep in mind that we're still drilled into 2017. So we're drilling down 2017 quarter, month, and day. So now we're on the day level. If we drill all the way back up, we can go down. The hierarchy in a different way. We can click these double down arrows, and basically that's going to drill down, but not take the previous level of the hierarchy into account. So since we have 3 years of data, if we drill down with the double down arrow, you can see we're drilling down to the quarter level, but we're getting rid of the year dimension. So now we're actually looking at, so let's say quarter 2, that's a sum of years 2016, 2017, and 2018. So it's a little bit confusing at first, and until you get your head wrapped around it. If we were to drill into months, we now see we're just looking at the 3 months that make up quarter 2, but with no year dimension behind it. So if we drill back up, the final way that you can drill down is this kind of forked arrow that will drill down on all levels. So we're drilling down to quarter now, but it's also keeping that top level of year. So now we have 2016 quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and so on. Then we drill down even further. We still have 2016 and the quarter, but now we have the months as well. And then finally, you can do it one more time. and get down to that year, quarter, month, day level. So it's good if you're expanding all the way down, but it does get kind of jumbled when you get down to a level that has a lot of data points. So that's basically how you drill down, and the drill down functionality is available because of this built-in date hierarchy. Let's say, I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Let's say you aren't using this for a date hierarchy, you have another hierarchy in mind. So for example, I have the retailer countries along the y-axis of this bar chart. If we wanted to create a hierarchy that's continent and then retailer country, we can do that very easily. I'm going to delete this existing hierarchy and build it again. All you have to do to create your own hierarchy is to drag one field onto another. So if we take retailer country and simply drag it onto continent, we see we now have a continent hierarchy that is continent and then retailer country. Then we simply need to drag it into the axis. And we can see we are now looking at continent on the top level. And using the exact same methods of drilling down, we can click on the single arrow and drill into Europe, which now shows us our European countries. So pretty easy to do. Just another view, if we drill down both arrows, we see all of our countries, or our forked arrow, we see continent and then country. So it gets a little cluttered there on the y-axis. So that's probably the easiest way to make your own custom hierarchy, or the other way, which is also very easy. We can get rid of our axis. We can simply throw in continent into the axis and then retailer country underneath. So it's basically creating your own hierarchy without actually creating it in the data view here on the right. So same functionality for the drill down. So hierarchies add a lot of depth to your data by allowing you to view basically different segments of your data. So if you were to just drill down into a single segment and keep drilling down, you can really get down to some row level insights. Hierarchies are very good. The only downside that you might want to take into account is if you have a lot of dates across your data, and Power BI is creating a built-in date hierarchy for you for every single date, then it may bloat your file a little bit. So be wary in case you don't need date hierarchies for all of your dates. A quick and easy fix for that is by creating a single date table. So if you create a date table and join to all of your date fields within your data, you can just have a single date hierarchy that you can then use across your reports. So that's hierarchies. Let's dive into dynamic metrics, which are probably my favorite trick that I don't think are used enough, just to kind of give you another idea. So on the base file here, we can see that when we click on total profit or total quantity, it changes to show us the metric that we have selected. This is actually kind of advanced, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty doable, and you can replicate it pretty quickly once you have that code. So basically, in Power BI, when you're creating a report, out of the box, you are simply going to throw in fields into the axis and the value. So let's actually go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this bar chart. Let's just build it from scratch. So we're going to create on the click on the bar chart visualization, and let's throw in a couple of these fields here. So if we were to throw in, what do we want? Let's do revenue in the values. We see we now have one bar for the revenue. That's because it isn't split up by any dimensions yet. And then finally, let's throw in continent into our axis. So we have our revenue by continent. And we see, in case we wanted to view cost, we would have to throw in cost into the values. But then that works okay. But if we were to throw in quantity as well, because we want to see quantity, we now see we don't have a proper scale for all three of those metrics. And we don't also want to have one visual for revenue, one for cost, one for quantity, because that would take up a lot of space. So dynamic metrics allow you to save a lot of space by allowing you to basically click on the slicer and filter based on the metric you want to show. So in order to do that, let's go ahead and make this a little bit smaller, and we will throw in, or actually we'll start by creating a slicer. We have to create our own data table. In order to do that, we click on home and then enter data. We're creating a table, let's call it let's call it select a metric. And these are going to be our metrics. So this is going to be all the possibilities of metrics that you want to show. So we're going to have total cost, total revenue, and total quantity. So we'll click load, and we'll see that table populate in our fields here on the right once it's been loaded. Give that just a second. And there it is at the bottom, select a metric. We can view that in the data tab just to make sure it's looking like we want it to. So our table is just 3 rows under this metrics column: total cost, total revenue, and total quantity. So now if we were to throw that column into a slicer, it would look like this. Metrics. So yeah, we see our 3 metrics here. And as of right now, it won't do anything because it's not attached to anything. There aren't any relationships set up, or there's no code to make this chart affected by this slicer. So we'll go ahead and create a custom measure, which is basically just a calculation that takes all of the filters into account and shows you your final result based on all of those filters. So in order to do so, we can just right-click on the sales table and create a new measure. So this measure, we can call it, what should I name it? Selected calculation, or we'll call it selected metric. I already have a selected metric, I believe. Let me go ahead and get rid of my selected metric. So we'll call it selected metric, but we'll throw it into the sales table. So selected metric. So for now, we can just set it equal to a constant just to show what measures are doing. So if we were to take selected metric and put it in the value and get rid of the others, we can see that we just have 1 calculated for each dimension in our data. So if we were to take that one step further and say selected metric equals sum of the revenue, we now see we're showing the revenue by continent. And it's an easy calculation, but it's still not going to dynamically show based on our selection. So we need to add a little bit more code. We will do basically an if statement, but instead we're going to use the switch function, which is also available in Excel, where you may have seen it. So we are going to use switch. And switch is going to ask us what we want to evaluate for. So we're going to check a number of criteria. And if those criteria evaluate to the expression that we're going to write, then it's going to execute some code. If not, it's going to keep looking and eventually execute an else condition. So we want to evaluate for true. So we are going to throw in some criteria, and if it evaluates to true, it's going to execute some kind of code. So if we were to say 1 equals 1, that would evaluate to true. So therefore, it would return, something. So we can go ahead and actually write some code that's going to check to see if our slicer is cost, then we want to show the sum of cost. If it's total quantity, we want to show the total quantity. So in order to do that, we can say if total cost in all selected of our select a metrics field. So I won't go too deep into what all selected does, but basically what we're saying is if total cost is in the selections for the metrics, we want to return the sum of the cost field. Similarly, we can copy that. And instead of cost, we can do quantity. If total quantity is in the selected metrics, we want to sum the quantity. And then finally, we can do the same for revenue, or actually instead of that, we can use revenue as our else condition. So in case the total cost or total quantity weren't in the selections, then we'll simply sum the revenue. So this is going to be true basically when only revenue is selected. Also, something to note is switch is going to evaluate to the first value that it sees, or first value that is true. So if we don't have anything selected here, total cost is actually selected. Since total cost is in all of these possible selections, total cost is what's showing on our graph. So now that we have this set up, we can click on quantity or revenue or total cost. And you can see it changing, but it's not too apparent. So we can actually go ahead and create a dynamic title to allow us to really visualize what our dynamic metric is doing. In order to do that, we can simply create one more measure. We'll go ahead and call this title. And we are going to say, we're going to set this equal to selected value of our metrics table, or our metrics column, select a metric metrics. Selected value is basically going to say if there is one selection in our slicer, return that selection. Else we have an alternate result, which will be, in our case, since our default is total cost, we will default to total cost. I already have that name, so we'll just call this title, our dynamic title. And we have that measure in place. So now we can go to our bar chart and our title. We can get rid of our title text. Actually, instead, we'll click on these ellipses on the right and click on conditional formatting. And this conditional formatting allows us to set a title dynamically dependent on a measure. So we're going to format by field value based on our new title measure, so dynamic title. Click OK. And let's make it a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. We'll make it black in the center and much bigger. So now when we click on total cost, we have a graph showing total cost or total quantity or revenue, or when none of them are selected, we have total cost as well, since that was the first condition in our switch statement. So this is very, very dynamic. You can have a list of however many metrics you want to show here. You can have a whole side of them and just go through each of these. Saves a lot of space and allows you not to have to duplicate pages of work just to show different metrics. And you can use this measure in as many visuals as you want so that you really don't need to repeat yourself. I would say this is a best practice in case you have, let's say, more than 3 metrics to show inside of your Power BI dashboard. So yeah, that's a really cool one. I guess we'll jump to number 5, which is forecasting. Forecasting is a very fun one. I'll jump back to the other file. Our forecasting, there are a couple of different options here. We can see on the left, as the one on the right loads, is the built-in Power BI forecasting method. It allows you to look at these, basically look at the historical data and be able to project fairly accurately, depending on some of the factors, what you might expect in the future. So we can actually make this much smaller in case we want to get a smaller idea. You see, with less data, it has a smaller sample size to make a prediction. But we can expand that back out. Also, we can see that there is another kind of way to forecast here in Power BI. This is a custom visual, so not a visual inherent to Power BI. It's actually a visual that someone has written and submitted to the Microsoft Store or the Microsoft Power BI App Source store so that other users can download and use that visual. So this one is pretty cool because it allows you to kind of zoom in on some data. You can see if we just kind of zoom in, get a smaller view of our data. So pretty cool functionality, allows you to kind of hover over and see where those forecasted points are looking at. But I'll walk you through how to set up each of these. The built-in solution takes just a second, so we can go ahead and start with that. So in our other file, in our forecasting, we can simply create a line chart with our date in our axis, and we can use our new selected metric in the values. So we want to get rid of our date hierarchy in this case because we don't really care about that hierarchy. We can click this down arrow and click on date instead of date hierarchy. So now we have all of our data here, which we can filter down or expand back out. And in order to show the forecasting, you can easily go on the Analytics tab here on the Visualizations pane. Click on Analytics, and all the way at the bottom, there is a forecast expandable section. There are also a lot of other expandable sections in case you need them, but we'll focus on the forecasting here. Then we need to click Add, which will create a forecast line. We can see it right there, but it's kind of short. We can forecast a certain number of points or a certain number of periods. So if we want to forecast a full year out or a couple months, we can actually forecast maybe 5, or let's do 6 months in the future. We can click Apply and see that see the forecast that it comes up with. It doesn't show too much here. We can set and ignore a certain number of periods selected. We can set a different confidence interval. That confidence interval is going to shrink or expand what it kind of estimates for that prediction. We'll leave it at 95. And seasonality is interesting because this is a parameter that you'll probably need to play with in order to get a prediction that's looking pretty good. So in our data, our data is probably pretty seasonal based on month or week. So if we set seasonality based on 30 days, which would equal a month, we see a little bit better of a representation there. Let's try week and see what it comes up with. So if we have a seasonality of 7 days, since we're on the day level, not too much better. But we'll also see that the forecast will vary depending on the amount of data we are passing into it. So it's picking up on something, but nothing too crazy. I already got rid of some of the dependent visuals. Let's hop on over to the other visual and see what we had here. So in our forecasting, we had a seasonality of auto actually. So if you leave auto, Power BI is able to pick up on some of that seasonality dependent on some of your filters. So basically with all the data, it's able to get a pretty strong prediction of that data. So pretty cool there. We're also able to visualize those actual data points in case we wanted to dig into it. So let's hop on over to the other file. So the other Power BI visual that we're going to look at for forecasting, you can get it from the store I was telling you about. So it's called the Marketplace here. So we can import from Marketplace and search for forecasting and find a bunch of different visuals here. They use different methods. For instance, this is using the ARIMA method in order to get a nice time series prediction. I like this one. This is the one I was showing you. We can simply add this visual to our palette here. So I had already imported it in, so we'll just update it. So we see it available to us on the right. It also has a nice little explanation that this runs an R package. We don't need to install that. So since this is kind of taking some machine learning and data science into this Power BI report, it is running an R script or an R script in order to calculate those predictions. Power BI supports both R and Python scripts. So actually that's specifically an R script. We can click on our visual here and bring it into the canvas. And in order to do this, I've already done this, but in order to do this for the first time, you need to enable your script visual. So in case you don't want any R scripts or Python scripts run in your environment, it's totally understandable, in which case you wouldn't be able to use a custom visual like this because it's going to need R or Python running on your machine. So in order to use this visual, we just need to throw in a couple of fields. We'll throw in our date and then that selected metric again and give it some time to run because it is a pretty in-depth calculation. We see we don't really have much of a forecast there. Let's see if we can extend it out a little bit, maybe change some parameters and see how that forecast can change. Under our formatting, we see these forecast settings. We are forecasting 500 points out in the future. Maybe we'll forecast out 90. And it also has options for seasonality factors, like I was talking about earlier. Let's say our data has a pretty good seasonality factor of month and week. We can see how that will affect our calculation here. See if we can get some accurate predictions. Yeah, we see a little bit more. It's actually able to develop some sort of idea of what we can expect. So a little bit of jitter in there. And with a 50% confidence interval, the top gray section is a 50% confidence interval. So they're pretty confident that your sales will fall in this range here. So that's how easy it is to set up forecasting in Power BI. You can do it very quickly out of the box, or just take a little bit of time and play with some of the custom visuals that are provided to you through that store. With that, let's go ahead and jump over to row level security, which is a very big topic within Power BI because row level security allows you to secure your reports within your organization. So let's say user A should only see a certain segment of data. They're only authorized to see maybe their own region. We can set it to where they will never be able to see anything other than their region inherently in the report. So to do that, let's go ahead and jump over to number 6 here. So within Power BI Desktop, we are able to create these roles. Roles are going to be these different permissions for users to be kind of placed into in order to only see those certain segments of data. So if we click on modeling and manage roles, we can create, or I've already created roles here. For example, I have a Europe manager and a North America manager, as well as a cooking gear analyst, the person who should only ever see cooking gear. With these roles already set up, I'll just show you what it'll look like when they're viewing as these roles. There's a helpful button called View As Roles. If we click that, we can now select those roles we have previously set up. So if I only wanted to see the Power BI report from the North America manager's viewpoint, we can click OK. And we can see that user can only see the United States, Canada, and Mexico. If we were to view as a different user, like the Europe manager, we click OK and see that user can only see the European view of the data. So it's very easy to set these up. In order to do so, we just have to type in a little bit of code. Oh, my page is broken from deleting that measure. I will go ahead and set it up on our original file. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete these roles and start over. Okay, I'll save that. And now we're viewing the whole data here. So in order to set up these roles for row level security, we simply click on Manage Roles and create a new role. So we can name this, we'll just do the same example here, Manager Europe. And then we have all of our tables available to us here in our actual fact table, which is called sales. We can filter down the data based on our columns. So for example, continent equals Europe. If I can spell it right, Europe. So the European manager will only see the data where continent equals Europe. So you can make this as complex as possible, or as complex as you need it to be. So continent equals Europe, year equals 2018, anything you need in this filter expression. So if we click save and then view as that role we just created, we can see the European role. And then just as another quick example, let's create that cooking gear analyst again. Analysts. And then that user specifically can only see, I think is product type equals cooking gear. Click save. And let's view as that role quickly. So that user is only able to see the cooking gear. If we were to expand our product type slicer, we can see that that user only sees cooking gear here. So once you set up these roles in Power BI Desktop, it's very easy to just assign a user in your organization to these preset roles. You can distribute these permissions individually through the UI, or you can also just set it up based on security groups. So if you have users that fall into a certain security group, you can easily say this security group should be this certain role within Power BI. So you can bulk edit users' permissions very easily. So finally, the last trick is email subscriptions. This isn't as much of a trick as it is just functionality within Power BI, but it is functionality that I don't think people use enough. So subscriptions allow users to get a daily emailed report or screenshot of a report in order to basically kind of maybe snapshot your data in time. Also just get a kind of quick glance view of how your metrics are doing. So if we hop on over to Power BI Service, we can see our report here. So 7 Power BI tips. So I'm viewing this report right now on this base page. If I were to come up to the top right and click subscribe, I already have a subscription I've created, but I will delete that. Go ahead and save and close and start over. So if I were to subscribe, it's going to ask me for some details for the subscription. So we can select a certain tab. So any of the tabs available to us, we'll select base. We can set a subject because this is going to be an email that is sent directly to me. So I can set this is my financial insights subscription. Include an optional message. Specifically, we want the base report page. So this can actually be called anything we want. This is actually, we can name it subscription, for example. So our report page is our base page, but we have any page available to us. We can also set a subscription frequency of daily, hourly, weekly, monthly, or after data refresh up to once a day. So this is pretty handy in case you are only maybe refreshing your data once a day and you want to see your data the moment it's refreshed. Power BI will send you an email screenshot of what the data looks like right after refresh. So I'll set that up to be daily. Specifically, actually let's do hourly. We can set up certain days. So if I only wanted this on weekdays, we can set up our days. And then also the time we want to start. So we can start at 3 p.m. Specifically with a start date and end date in case you only want this to go for a certain period of time. So once you've created all those subscriptions, you can click save and close, and it will set that subscription and it will mail to you whenever that subscription is ready, whenever you set up that schedule. You can also set up subscriptions for every other tab. So since we have like 8 tabs on our report, we can set up a subscription for each tab. So not just that base tab. So just to show you an example of what this looks like, I received one today, and we can see that our subscription one came through with a picture showing us our data as it is today. It says you're receiving this email because you subscribed to the base page. Something to note, I subscribed myself, but if you are an administrator and you aren't actually using row level security, you are able to subscribe as many users as you want. You simply need to type in their emails. And you can see this note right here, you cannot subscribe others because this is using row level security. So if you had just a basic Power BI report, you are able to type in, hey, I also want this sent to someone at someone.com, pretty much anything you need. So those subscriptions are sent out to maybe a larger audience of users. So also this subscription also has a nice link to go directly to the report. You can just open it up quickly. So in case you saw something that stood out in that email subscription, you're able to just open it up in Power BI very quickly. So now you can quickly drill into the data and see maybe what was happening in that quick picture. So with that, that rounds up our 7 Power BI tips and tricks that you should definitely add to your reports to kind of give Power BI more functionality and extend some of the basic uses of Power BI. I hope you got something out of this webinar. We'll be sharing this report in case you want to kind of dig into how I set up some of these examples, in case I was going pretty quickly through some of the actual development of these different tricks. With that, I think that'll be it. Tom, do you have any closing words?
No, thank you, Parker. And just to reiterate, we will be sending out a recording of this demo, as well as some literature specifically on these 7 tips and trips. So you'll have a sort of a cheat sheet that you can keep next to you as you work through your Power BI dashboards. So wait to hear from us over the next few days, and you'll be receiving some information. So with that, many thanks for joining us today, and have a good rest of the day. And thank you, Parker.
Thank you all.